I'm alive.
You're alive?
Yeah.
I thought you said for a second you're live, and then I realized you said I'm alive.
Uh,
Is that like a I'm alive, or is it like
no,
I'm here, I exist?
the latter. I thought I was bicycling 8 miles on Thursday mornings. Apparently, I've been bicycling 15 miles on Thursday mornings before I start my work day. It makes me feel a little bit better.
There
So
you go.
it's 8 mile. It's 7.5 miles one way, and then I ride all the way back. So
And to
I'm
get your
trying to be
morning
fresh like
Starbucks or something.
Goggins. Or when I go bicycling,
Yeah.
no, it's my knees are tore up because I have a muscle imbalance because I just run. So I have no abdominal strength. I have no glute or buttock strength. I just have like my front leg muscles that have been pretty much been jogging for like the past 10 years with no supporting muscle to compensate, which are driving my knees inward, and now my knees are just very much in pain.
Hmm.
So then I try to knock off doing 60 sit-ups a day, and my lower back and my stomach muscles are throbbing. Like I move around like a retiree. Like it's bad.
Did you ever read the 4 Hour Body by Tim Ferriss?
No, I read the 4 Hour Work Week. That changed my life.
Oh, well, the 4 Hour Body. One thing that I took away from that is, well, according to him, anyways. I don't know. I think he does research on this, obviously, but when you're doing core exercises, he says that there's like only two things that actually work. So like sit-ups and stuff, like because your abdominal muscles are so, I don't know, they're
Core.
just so like uh, stretchy. I guess I don't know how to describe it, but one of them is called cat puking. It's this like thing where you literally get that down on your hands and knees, and then you like form the pose of a cat puking. There's a whole protocol to it, I guess. And then there's one other. I can't remember what that was, but I just thought like the cat puking one was kind of interesting. But talking about sit-ups reminded me of that.
Is Tim Ferriss some Olympic athlete who grants him the authority to be the authority on health?
I don't know that he is an authority. I mean,
Uh,
I'd assume he did the research for his book, but you know, there's a lot of research that's wrong. So, um, but yeah, I just wonder what the effectiveness of it is. That always made me like after that question. Well, what's the effectiveness of actually doing sit-ups and that? Am I actually doing much of anything other than making my back sore,
yeah,
my
my
hips
stuff.
pop?
I'm just moving slowly all over the place. Like I have a duck foot. Like my left foot is straight when I review the footprints of my run on the beach,
Hmm.
but my right foot is like at a 45-degree angle, and I'm sure that that's not helping my knee, right? And so like I'm almost confident my hips require some type of like work, or that my hips are contributing to my knee issues for lack of motion. I'm effed up, man. And now I know why during like the medieval times the life expectancy was like 35. Like, man,
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel my age more and more every day too. So I know what you mean. Um, I just don't remember feeling shitty all the time before. So, hmm.
What can as if we're the authorities, right? But what can project management in regards to tech or specifically software learn from generals of war? I ask this question pretty much every morning and every end of business day. But like obviously the consequences are more severe when not meeting expectations probably on a daily basis, I would think. But have you ever considered like the strategies and tactics that at wartime that generals make versus um, project managers or mid-level engineering managers?
Um, sorry. Um, no. Well, sort of. Maybe not those specific, uh, roles or whatever, but actually, that book. Oh, there's a series of books, I guess now. Uh, Gosh, I'm blanking on extreme ownership is basically that concept, right? It's more about leadership than it is about specific like execution roles because you can be a leader down, you have to lead at every level of your organization. So if you're an individual contributor at the bottom or at the very bottom of the totem pole, there's opportunity to lead. But there's things that he talks about in there like that are battlefield tactics that that he applies to kind of that kind of realm. So yeah.
One of the one of the differences, and this might be a stupid question, right? Do generals tend to be soldiers first?
Uh, well, I guess it depends on what you mean. Like enlisted soldiers, or do they tend to be because they're commissioned officers? So they're
Do
they
do 1 to 5 star generals usually start off as foot soldiers?
well they no, not generally,
Okay,
because they would start off as a.
so what
Well, I
they go
mean,
to
they're
they
technically a foot soldier, right? Well, they'd just be in like a leadership position, so they'd be
so they go to
commissioned
West Point
officers.
and they kind of bypass
Well, they go
like
through ROTC, and it's not just West Point, but yeah, West Point would be a very good one to go to. But there's ROTC programs all over.
I think maybe another difference would be that generals actually have to acknowledge the needs of soldiers because it's life or death, and they supply soldiers maybe based on whatever resources are available, or they communicate what resources need to be created that may not exist in order to facilitate whatever military objective that exists.
Hmm.
Whereas maybe mid-level engineering managers or project managers, they just practice daily stand-up and they practice Scrum.
Yeah, they give status reports and stuff too, and um,
But do they understand in general, are they close enough to the work or metaphorically close enough to the trenches to really understand what opportunities for increasing throughput exists to satisfy or accommodate business objectives? Like I'm trying to really, I honestly think I'm on a trajectory to be in leadership, like CTO or something. I mean, obviously, maybe I have to be a mid-level manager, but like,
Found your own company, and you could skip that entire step. But
yeah,
yeah,
I'm just. I think I have the benefit of actually building things for 20 years. That maybe I'll be in a better position to manage things based on everything that I messed up at, or everything that not only that I effed up, but also observed being effed up, even if it were outside of my influence as a foot soldier.
yeah. I think project management is. I mean, it's a discipline in its own right. And there's its own. I mean, it's its own contextual thing. There's a whole book on it. It's um and certifications and stuff like that. I don't know if that's what you mean, because there are. So take get out of software for a second and get into like a building project manager, which is the same kind of paradigm. It's um, like what you're doing is trying to align everything according to a schedule, so that you know if you're on track for dates and stuff like that. I just don't think we have that in software because we have like things that the business needs to accomplish from a technical standpoint. Um,
Yes and no.
but yeah,
So the disconnect, the disconnect or the differences are with civil engineering. There's no concept, I think, and I hope I'm wrong, but there's no concept of, or maybe there is. Let me use software first, and then see if it um, correlates or if there's a parallel to civil engineering. All right, in software, all right, the most systems are built. Okay, within the enterprise, most systems are built to facilitate business needs. However, to to manage or to increase the likelihood of delivering on those business needs through software, there's architectural needs that need to be, facilitated or in place so that business needs can be delivered sustainably. All right, and I, I think a lot of shops that are run by people that majored in finance instead of engineering within IT, they tend to say, "Hey, we need this feature, we need that feature, we need this feature, build that feature," and completely ignore the foundation that really facilitates the sustainable development of those features, hence business features. Um, is there something similar, or is there a parallel to civil engineering when it comes to bridges, highways, towers, skyscrapers, etc.?
well, I mean, I'm sure that the project manager or the finance people don't go out to the construction workers and say, "Build the bridge."
Well, I
Yeah,
mean, they
like,
lay
well,
out the
we need.
architecture, right? And then it's
Yeah.
the utility of the architecture that I think is analogous to business features.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think of the feature itself being the bridge, and the construction workers and the people actually constructing it as maybe more like, um, well, we do that. We in software we end up doing that work too, but it's like because it's really hard to dissociate them.
But I think it's
Yeah.
swapped. I
Yeah,
think to your
I don't know.
point,
Yeah, I think the metaphor doesn't really work, but the thing is that abstractly, when you get into project management, abstractly, it's not different. It's just that software is a lot more volatile than it's a lot more volatile, and there's less of a process around it understood. Like, really, what it should be is that if there is an architectural need to build up prior to some feature work, that should be expressed by the technical leadership, right? Um, and so it's perhaps lack of technical leadership that's the problem when we run into these situations more than anything. Like if you need to spend time to build out a capability, an architectural capability, before you can deliver a feature, that should be communicated as by the technical leadership to the broader business leadership, and then the project manager should track that case or track that development of that architectural feature.
Yeah, we were saying should.
Well, we're all
Uh,
practicing is the thing. I shut my door quick. I have my headphones on so I can hear you still. But
yeah, I think so. So with that example of civil engineering versus software engineering, I think what the difference is with software engineering within the enterprise, the the focus of activities revolve around the utility. Hence, the utility is the end user and the user stories, right? How they benefit from the software. Where I think with civil engineering, the primary focus isn't the utility. The primary focus is the architecture. And once that architecture is built, that utility is realized as a product, right? It's yeah. So like I think in civil engineering, they engineer the architecture to realize the product, right? You engineer the bridge to realize cars and people walking over it or driving over it. I think with enterprise software development, the the focus is on building the utility and not necessarily focusing on the architecture first to realize the utility that could come from it. You know what I'm trying to articulate?
um, kind of. I
I,
think what
I,
you
I,
might be saying is that the the complexity of the situation isn't well understood by the other side, like the business side of the things or the people wanting it. Like if you go out to build like a bridge, their focus is that they want to be able to cross the cavern or river, whatever it is, right? But there's a well understood thing that building a bridge is a very complicated thing. It requires a lot of thought and consideration. Otherwise, you end up with the wobbly bridge like they had in Seattle or something like that. Um, and so there's like inherent complexity that's well understood outside of the realm of thing. Same with building rockets,
but
probably,
but
right?
but can you pause?
Yeah,
Because the inherent complexity of what? Of the utility or of the architecture? And
of the architecture.
of the architecture, right? So you a lot of focus, a lot of consideration has to be based on the laws of physics, right? And that probably is a higher priority of getting that right first than facilitating the utility of how people use that bridge. Right?
Yeah,
They walk, they drive over it.
yeah. Although the other thing is with software, it's not an all or nothing. It's usually not an all or nothing thing. Architecture can be optional if you're willing
Oh,
to let it fall down, right? A bridge isn't the same, right? Like a bridge, if it falls down when there's people on, you're going to kill people. And we're talking about obviously not when we're talking about airplanes or something. There's a lot more rigid. And I guess if you'd probably get into rigid, um, like aeronautic and safety oriented software, you'd get a very strict, rigid structure that understands the complexity of what you're doing. Um, that's not necessarily the case with most business use cases. It might be okay to allow things to be slow or to trip or fall over at
well,
the expense of it. So, to save on money and time for
the
now.
the difference is the people that manage the work or manage the expectations.
Yeah, and that's what I
are
said is
cut from a different cloth, right? In enterprise software engineering, the the people that manage the work are people that are typically not engineers at all. They're accountants or people that work in finance that are managing the engineering effort, and
well,
we question why there's such a high failure rate. I said that.
yeah,
Okay.
I don't know that I've ever been in a situation where the finance people are running the tech side. I mean,
Oh, so
that
they have
seems
computer
strange.
science degrees.
No, no, but I mean, the thing is that they're telling us what we need to do because they have a business objective that they're trying to accomplish. Like without those business objectives, what do? We don't do anything. If we don't know that we're trying to build a bridge, like we're not going to just go build a bridge and know what's
They're
going on, right? They're
they're
giving the
telling
direction.
you they're telling you what the end goal is,
Yeah. So I want
but
you
they're
to.
bleeding in the how it's going to be done, which isn't necessarily conducive to how well it could be delivered because they don't have background in the engineering part.
Okay, so the how it's going to be delivered thing, um, and that's where maybe you get in. So we're probably talking about project management then at that point, not necessarily finance people, um, or other broader business people. Because when you get into project management, good project management doesn't prescribe like process or whatever. Um, and
With emphasis on good.
they might have methodologies that they want, but this is why we're always asked for estimates and things, right? Because what they're trying to accomplish, project management, is to understand. Um, they need to understand duration, and they need to understand um, dependency relationships, because then you can manage work across concurrent work, right? So if I say that this piece there's like a critical path, right? Where I think I'm using that term correctly, anyways, where we can do these five things concurrently, but this thing can't be done until this thing's done, and this thing's going to take 5 weeks, and then this thing's going to take 6 weeks after. And if you can get down to just those things that are like minimum
Hmm.
things that you can't do concurrently, you can get a project timeline, and then you could check in based on what your plan is and try to come up with a reasonable estimate for when can we actually deliver some thing. Um, and
How
then
many
you get into.
organizations actually do that?
um, I think that there's a good amount. I think there's a lot that try to do it. I just think that we don't see that work as developers, because we're not in the leadership meetings, and we
Well,
just.
if you, it, but how is that possible? Because in order to establish what the critical path is, you need to establish what the prerequisites for each of those activities are in order to realize the critical path, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, and that's why they,
that has to come from the developers.
yeah, it's comes from usually like architectural leadership, right, or technical leadership.
Well, it has to come from engineering. Yes.
And yeah, and mid-level engineering managers also contribute a lot to that. It's rarely like do you go down to the level of the engineers, although we do get asked about, like, you've been there, like in this situation you get asked about estimates, and we need estimates for this, and um, and then it's always like, well, it depends on a lot of things. Estimates are so tough because the thing is, to do estimates is you need to decompose the problem, but they don't want to spend time decomposing the problem until they have estimates. I think is the major thing I've run into. Um, like, you need to have a full spec out of what's going to happen in order to properly estimate work, I think. Because I don't know. The only real. Yeah,
And the people factor,
yeah,
which gets ignored.
yeah. That's why I actually like working more with deadlines, I think, and just saying this is how much time you're allotted to it, and then being like, what can you accomplish in that time frame? And say, well, here's the trade-offs that I would have to do to make this work within that time frame. And then they could choose whether they want to extend the time frame or not. Like, you'd be like, there's going to be a huge amount of technical debt, but I'll get it done.
And that's at a
It won't be
component level, right?
scalable, but I'll get it done. Well,
That's at a
scalable is a
component level,
requirement.
right?
Then it's going to require more time.
That's at a component level,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Or, well, I mean, at the component level. Um,
Hey,
so
Gambler.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, project management within software it's always been kind of like I just don't think we've got it figured out quite yet. In terms of scaled up like stuff. I think like safe and stuff like that, like scaled agile and doing planning meetings with groups and having the organization say, here's what we're doing. And then, that coming to the critical path during that meeting and understanding all the dependencies and stuff is a pretty good way to do things. But
Depending on how it's practiced.
yeah, yeah, that's the problem is it's all practice, right? It's not a science. It's not a particular, I don't know. But man, I tell you what, I deal with that kind of stuff. Like, if I don't know, I think it depends too on like the clarity of vision for the product, right? Um, it's like, what if it's like we don't really know, like imagine going to, we don't really know what we want here, but we essentially want to get a person from this side of the river to this side of the river. Like, you know what I mean? That's our problem.
That
Um,
could be a bridge. That could be a teleport. That could be a
yeah.
submarine.
And they say, you know what I want you to do is I want you to build a slingshot. They tell them,
Catapult.
and I want it to have on the other side a like a trampoline or some sort of bag or something like that. Can you build that? That'd solve my problem. And then you look at it and go,
I mean,
hmm,
that's kind of analogous to like how they land rovers on celestial bodies. Is like there's there's many ways to do it. I remember NASA had like a pyramid ball that would bounce a couple times, and then it would like open up as if it were a Cancun, and then the Spirit or Opportunity would roll out from it, and then they use a sky crane. So yeah,
yeah. But I mean, I think that's the problem too, is that you need to have like a clear vision of the product and know what that good product looks like, and then go from there. Like if you prescribe building a slingshot and you build a slingshot, it's like, I don't know, man.
I think I think I want to. I don't want to be a mid-level manager because I feel like there's. I just feel like there's not enough influence. Like
Yeah,
I
you got to
either
be a
want
director.
I either want to be a principal or like
Staff engineer.
just a high-ranking technical strategist.
Yeah, staff engineer is what you want, probably.
Staff engineer. What? That's just managing developers
No, it's
in regards
basically
to allocating, like, given the work, how am I going to strategically allocate developers and manage the development effort? That
no, it's not really that. It's more of like gosh, I don't know how to describe it. Um, it's like you work in the business. You're like at that business level. Gosh, why don't I just, rather than do that, I'll just get the definition. Uh, there's a book on leadership beyond the management track. Why don't they just tell you what it is in this stupid thing? There's this guide overview. Blah blah blah. Yes, it's like, oh, I guess staff is. So this person actually puts it between senior, so it is at the principal. It's analogous to a principal then.
Mm.
I always thought that they were kind of slightly different. That principal was below staff, or like fellow. But it's kind of like you're in like a high level engineering technical leadership. Um, I think in the past we've called these people architects, but architecture is really different. I honestly think it's a different discipline, and I think that there should be, staff engineers that or engineers that outrank architects in a lot of cases. But um,
Are you ready for a new topic?
yeah,
Don't quit your job
why?
because you're going to be competing with uh, people that were laid off from Facebook, from Twitter, all the, I would assume, high caliber, really good at interviews, like knows how to write a red and black tree or a B plus tree during an interview on a whiteboard. You're going to be competing with those people if you decide to attempt a job hop since the
Mm,
mass layoffs.
no,
You don't think so? You're not
no,
going to compete with those people, or they're not
no.
going to take the pay for the type of jobs you're going to interview for.
Yeah, probably. That's the thing, is that they're sitting at like on cloud nine, right? And
Yeah.
um and I don't think that, I mean, if they're desperate enough they will, right? But thing is like
If they
I
live in San Francisco, they will.
yeah. Yeah. I have a pretty good job lead. Um I mean, there's no guarantees obviously, but one of my old people that I one of the people I used to work with, not old, um, has been trying to convince me to consider jobs with the place that they're at. So um, I don't know. I'm considering it still. Like, I was 2 days ago, I was about ready to pop and just be like, okay, yep. But that's because I'm working on something right now that I'm not at all passionate about. It's just a slog. I really hate. I really don't like working with the actual like technology, like. So I'm realizing I could never see myself being like a DBA or like a expert in a particular like technology, right? And that I'm a domain architect in it, or a tech architect in it. It just, I don't know. Dealing
Well,
with Elasticsearch and trying to build out something, and really what I want to do with this is just redesign the application so that it works, so that we don't have the inherent complexity needed um, in the actual like backing structures, right?
hold up. So you couldn't see yourself being a React developer or a Xamarin developer
Yeah,
or a
I don't
MongoDB developer?
know. The more I actually look at it, the more I think about like maybe what I want to be is it more in the product space. Um, it's a different discipline too, though. Like there's some place in the middle between like so there's like UX designer type work, and then there's like product designers. I really like helping define what the product's going to be, and then converting that into like what the engineering team needs to work on. But then when it comes to like in-depth like technical problems with that, I'd rather delegate that off to somebody who's more analytical than I am, because I'm not a very analytical person at
You're
all.
not.
No, I'm not at all. um, Analytical people are much more like focused on numbers and um, stuff like that. Uh, like I know people that whip out formulas and can do calculations and be like, oh, blah blah blah, and all this stuff. But I'm not that way at all. um, I might come across that way, but I'm more of like I'm much better at thinking about how things are going to be used and and thinking about how to model the domain and like how business rules should be applied and where things should potentially live and how things should be structured. Stuff like that. um, Definitely not in the So like right now I'm working on something where we had a, and I'm just regretting the day that I suggested we do this, but like we have an old Elasticsearch cluster, and um, we have like a subset of orders in it, and I'm trying to like move that to a different architecture, and it's just like I can't get beyond it because there's like no value that I'm providing really. It could potentially cause um, some like instability, and there's a lot of capability that we have there that we're not using because the application like isn't so user focused where we're like, well, how does the user actually use this? Like, do we know that? Like, do they need to be able to sort by this column quickly? Do they need to be able to find search by this? Do they need to be able to do this? And then like, what are the update speeds for this thing? And I'm thinking more about the product that uses the tech rather than the tech itself. And there's like this disconnect. Um, Plus, I have no patience for things that take frickin' forever to load up. So I don't know.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't know. I keep thinking like maybe I'd be better in like getting into like UX design and trying to steer that way. But I don't know how people get in that.
I wouldn't be able to do that.
I don't even know how people go down that path. Like from a thing like there's a different discipline because you get into like user interviews um, and like surveys and things like that, trying to get feedback about the product, and that's a whole part of that I don't understand. But being able to take that feedback and trying to actually convert that into a design that works, like I feel like that would be something I could get behind.
I think there's certain principles, like foundational principles. Like when you say that, I think about Billie Hollis when I listen to .NET Rocks episodes in which she's like a WPF UX like authority.
Yeah,
But you know, I I know what looks nice, but I can't produce it from
yeah.
scratch.
And don't mistake me. I'm not talking about a UI designer. Like I'm talking about
You
like
said
UX.
UX.
They're two different things.
I thought that they were related.
Well, they're related, yeah, and they often get conflated, and they're often maybe the same. Like person might take on multiple roles, um, but I'm not talking about like necessarily, what looks nice or whatever. It's more about like how do I use
Oh,
the software to accomplish tasks. Um, like for instance, a UI designer might never think about the number of clicks to get something accomplished, right?
yep.
A UX person would, like, because I'm thinking about, well, what's going to be the experience for the people using this thing. Um, Now, visually nice things are like a UX component, right? Because if things look nice, there's a perception of quality, even if there might not actually be quality behind the thing, right? So things that look crappy
I give
are, yeah,
I give UX interviews when I tell them to build a Uber Eats system, and like a lot of the times they say that yeah, we need to have a registration page. They fill that out, and then they can order. And I'm like, okay, and how many people you think are actually going to stay around when they're hungry to fill out that registration form before they can start viewing the catalog in order,
yeah,
right? Wouldn't it be
yeah,
better if they order, they get invested in configuring what they want to have delivered to their specific location, and then we just get their phone number, maybe their name, and then we can incentivize them to finish their profile later after we get their money.
yeah, yeah. And I think if you talk to like a good UX person, it'd be like that could be the case, because most of UX and design isn't like isn't like, I know the secret like pot of information that makes all applications better. It's more like they use heuristics to bet on certain things. Like, I bet if we made it so that you don't have to fill out the registration page, any registration, but if you can immediately get into your order and then place it and just register at the end, um, that will have better conversion rates, or whatever. And so then what they'll do is they might build out a flow that works like that. Then they might do some like just like user testing at like um, with low fidelity mocks or something like that, and then verify, okay, given these two competing flows that we built with really no code, just like a workflow tool, this one seems to be better. And so then they might build that out, and then they test it again, and then they might have another bet where they say, well, I bet if we do this, it would be whatever. And so it's a bunch of it's an iterative process, just like software. Actually, it's more iterative than software. It's probably, I think. uh, but I don't know. That's where I get into things like, so we released a feature this week, and it's literally like something that should have been in there like years ago, but just adding like thumbnail images, and like, you think it's so simple to do that. In terms of the tech part of it was super simple, but the actual like thinking about how this should actually be on the page was not. And
Mm.
that's what this gets into, because we're like, well, what happens if you, so one of the things I was like, well, okay, you want to hover to see this image, and it's like, where do you put the hover? And it's like, if you put it at center page, where are you blocking? If you put it down in the corner, oh, that might be nice. But then if you get on a widescreen monitor, then how far do your eyes have to travel from where you're hovering to see that image? It's actually a pretty long distance. Um, and there's all sorts of like iterations we went. It would look like a whole day to decide how to put this thing together, but I think we ended up in an okay spot. There's some interactions that I think are not ideal still, because there's certain like combo boxes on the page or selects where you might accidentally end up in a hover depending on the like precision of what you're doing. But um, like, I feel like we came to a really good ending spot on that, and I was pretty happy with what we released. But that's the process. It's thinking about that. And actually last night, and then I woke up this morning at like 4 o'clock, and I couldn't get back to sleep with my mind racing about this one project that we've been trying to get working for like, or kicked off for like a year, um, where it's um, like building out like an inventory, just like a new experience for inventory management or something like that. And just thinking about like, well, what flows are people like, what's a new user doing, and does this really make sense for them, and how do the terms match up with what they're doing? And then if we do it like this, is that adding too much complexity for this cohort of people? Or um, man, that stuff like keeps me up at night thinking about it, because it's interesting. It's like a puzzle. You're trying to find out like the correct.
I want to. I don't know. I think I want to have a session where you technically interview me. I want to see how far I could get. I think you're going to expose a lot of the things that I need to fill in the gaps of if I want to aspire to be a principal.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd be able to do that. I don't know that I'd give a good technical interview. I don't know that there is a good such a thing as a good technical interview, to be
I
honest.
drill people.
Yeah. Uh,
I'm like sadistic when I interview people. Like when I give a technical interview, like I go out my way to break them. So
yes. See, for me, it's like it the technical bit. It's like, I almost kind of to what you're saying is like, if you have a resume and you can point to accomplishments on it, and you've generally can, I mean, so there's like a small bit of like layer where you need to make sure that people aren't just like lying, right,
yeah,
about their accomplishments or whatever. Like, just verifying. And you could do that through basic questions about, oh, tell me about this project and what do you think of that framework and stuff like that. And you get a general sense about, what if they actually did what they said that they did. And then it's just, do you get along with the person? Um, and do you think that you could work with them? And I that's about the only that's about it for me in terms of like what I would want to test out of someone. It's like, are you willing to accept the pay and benefits and all of this? And now that might be different if I was more focused on like a very specific area, like we're hiring for a Elasticsearch expert. Like I wouldn't even be qualified to give that technical interview because I'm not an Elasticsearch expert, right? Um,
Tech
so it's
recruiters do it all the time.
yeah. So it's but then it's what are you trying to understand? Is you're trying to get out of understand if they're lying to you about their experience in it? That's what's the game here? It's almost like really it's like you should look at general like history of work, make sure that they can talk about it cogently, and then decide whether your rapport with them is good enough, and then take a chance. That's about it.
See, like you continue to disagree with me. I still am a big believer. If you are the technical authority on what your resume claims you are, I should be able to Google you and see a professional footprint that backs up what you claim. Everybody disagrees with me on that.
Well, if you're a
If you're a
technical authority,
professional, up
maybe.
that. If you're a professional and this is how you spend the majority of your life earning a living, there should be some type of social proof that substantiates that claim. It should be.
But that would
It's
be
so much.
unique to software, though. Like
It
every
wouldn't. I
other
could look up
industry.
a plumber and I could see that that plumber has reviews by customers. I should see some type of professional footprint. If I don't see a professional footprint, but you're some senior whatever engineer, and I see absolutely nothing that even resembles that this is what you do for a living, I don't have confidence that this is what you're about. I don't. And if I see other people that do have a professional footprint when I Google them, they're going to be at the front of the list as people that I want to interview. And it's everybody disagrees with me,
Yeah, I'll
which
disagree. Keep
means that which
disagreeing.
I think everybody isn't as smart as I am, right? Because I
Yeah,
just think it's a no brainer that like it's like hiring a fitness or a personal trainer. I'm going to Google that personal trainer to see if they if their lifestyle is about what they claim it is. If I'm now this is where I effed up at, right? Like I'm going to Google a professional car audio installer to see like if the first couple of pages are all about their installs. Like why wouldn't I do that? But for whatever reason, it's taboo if you search for a developer
I'm
and
not.
you see
It's
nothing.
not taboo to do that. It's. I think it's wrong to dismiss somebody who's done that just because um, there's plenty of people who are very very professional at their jobs that like go and find like okay, let's go back to that civil engineer thing. Find a civil engineer that writes that has a technical like a footprint on the internet.
Well, that's unlikely, and
Yeah.
I accept that, right?
So
Because
why is that?
that is within a highly regulated, controlled environment, in which that's something that they just I don't think can personally practice outside of work, building a bridge.
Okay, okay, fine. Well, so you're saying it's just dependent on whether like if you're in a regulated industry, you get by without having to have a footprint. But if it's a non-regulated, like we're not the same as plumbers and stuff like that either. I mean, sort of we are, but they're like that would be more like at a firm level, right?
Uh,
You could have reviews at like a software engineering firm, and a firm might put out a lot of content, but you as
well,
part of that firm might have contributed to the success or failure of that firm. And so it's I think it's totally unreasonable. Plus, if you do find people that have technical like blogs and lots of details out there, I think you're getting a certain type of person, and it
yeah,
might
tell
not
me
be
that they're
the
invested.
yeah, but it might not be the type of person that you well they're invested or they're just really good at marketing. That's another aspect here. But
Marketing or not, you can't deny what they put out there, especially if you have a clue of what that thing is. Like, I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. If someone is going above and beyond to demonstrate that they're the authority in something that you need help with, that person is going to be at the front of the line.
okay, so you're talking about high-powered consultancy then. You're talking about consultancy, and you're not talking about hiring for a job, like as an employee,
What's the
because
difference?
consultancy is different, right? Okay,
How?
so the
If
way
you
you
need help,
described it,
if you need help completing an objective, what is the difference?
well, is that what you're trying to do though?
Yes.
Always. Not necessarily. You might be trying to, I mean, you're trying to accomplish many objectives, hopefully, with certain
I'm
employment
not
jobs.
looking for a staff augmentation. I'm looking to deliver.
Okay, so you're looking to deliver something. Um, okay, so here's like hiring paths, right? I'm trying to deliver this product to the market, and I know that there's a component that is, and I'll just keep going back to Elasticsearch, and I need an expert in that. Yeah, then I think it's prudent to say, well, who are the experts in this? And if they are experts, they've probably worked on some open source projects. They maybe have written some blog posts. They have, um, maybe they've have job history with FANG companies, and they can talk about it cogently or whatever. And you think that what you're doing is you're betting on the fact that this person can help you do that. That's a consultant, right? They're consulting with you, and you might hire them on as a full time like architect, like a domain architect in terms of like they're highly specialized in one technical field, right? Or technology or vertical. But that's not really necessarily what you're doing with all people, though. You might want, for certain thing, you might need somebody you just literally just feed work to do to, and they chug it out at a slow pace, and you've never heard of this person before, but they're going to help you get the job done. But they're literally there to, and you want somebody who's not necessarily got a lot of opinions. Maybe they are more of a take it and run with it. Once you give them the vision, they know how to accomplish it. They're quiet, they're more analytical or something like that.
Right. And how am I supposed to figure out if they can actually deliver?
Yeah, team building is,
I,
but that,
I, I take the
yeah,
I take like we gotta hedge our bets. We gotta hedge our risks, right? If someone has no professional web footprint and the only thing I could do is interview them for an hour and maybe interview them again for another hour at a later time. Okay, that's one way. Or there could be someone that clearly when I research who they are, they check off the boxes because they've demonstrated that they care about this specific area that I need a solution for.
okay,
And then I
okay,
interview them, and I'm really interviewing them for they've already demonstrated that within their social footprint that this is what they do. Now I'm interviewing them to see if we're able to work together.
okay. Well,
Like,
let's take this back a couple, because you had a couple jobs ago where you said there was somebody who was the perceived technical authority in this thing on the project with you. You didn't have high things to say about that person, if I remember correctly.
well, yeah, because there's a difference in what that person can deliver in regards to, hey, I need this UI built, I need that UI built, I need that UI built, versus that person being hired as an architect and making architectural decisions in which that person is not thinking strategically about the life expectancy of the solution that is meant to facilitate business objectives. That person doesn't think like that. They
Yeah,
don't. What they think about is vendor tools. They don't think about the business objectives. They don't think about enterprise cross-cutting concerns. They don't think about any of that.
yeah. But if you're just looking at their web footprint, you might assume that they do know all of that stuff, just because
No,
of the
I
complexity of
wouldn't
it. Yeah,
because
yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I think I'll disagree with you on the end to
yeah.
this. I just think that team building is there's room for a lot of different people, and not many of those people should be people. I really think it's actually probably not advantageous at all to have people who have a lot of, you want people who are
Jack of all trades.
No, you want people who are we'll go back to the beginning, soldiers, right? You want people and that maybe don't have distinguished blog. They aren't boisterous. They aren't putting out a lot of content on the web. It kind of shows it's a different type of person that does that kind of stuff. And you get too many of those people in the same room together, and it's a disaster because they're all driven in the same kind of way, and you get no like diversity in thought, or you don't have checks and balances amongst people. You don't have a highly analytical person with
Well,
somebody who's more
whose fault
expressive.
would whose fault would that be?
That'd be engineering management. But
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. So when you're doing a technical interview, you kind of need to take into consideration what the team you're building is supposed to be. Like, and actually I was talking to my old manager about this, and it's like about teams and team structure, and it's like you put together a team of 3 people, but there's no person with natural leadership or vision on it. And what are you going to get? You're going to get a team that
What
that
I'm dealing with.
yeah, that only builds what you're given and doesn't think about the future,
Yep.
doesn't give a lot of feedback. They're working. So what you need is like 2 people maybe on a team who can do that, and 1 person with vision. But what happens if you get 3 people with vision and whatever? They're all spending time competing with each other on vision and philosophy and never getting any work done.
Well,
Um,
it depends on how you delegate the work, right? So and maybe you could correct me, right? But the United States government, like, or if we just talk about aerospace and federal projects, like NASA says, this is the solution that we need. However, we're going to offer contracts to build these components. Come to us with your ideas on how you're going to build that component, and this component needs to satisfy the following objectives. Blah 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 blah. Right? Come to me with your ideas. Come to me with a prototype. Right? They don't say, here's the solution. Da da. Here's the people that are going to work on the solution. No, they componentize. They compartmentalize. Right? They I think even though they may be somewhat like bureaucratic, I don't know how to say the word or the grammar, but even though they may be
Bureaucratic.
somewhat bureaucratic, thank you. Even though some of their techniques may be antiquated, I can't say that word either. Antiquated.
Antiquated.
um, I think they understand the value and separation of concerns compared
Yeah.
to a lot of software shops that don't understand how to compartmentalize the various areas that make up a solution.
Yeah.
Like,
And if you have, and that's what I'm saying, is that teams like built around, so going back to this component, right? If you have a team with 2 people that lead for the same thing, and they have different visions about how that component is going to get built, your entire team is going to get differing signals about what should we build and how should we build it, because they're not in that like thought and vision leadership type role. They don't necessarily have the thing, and so you shouldn't really build. I really don't think teams should have well, okay, so like teams should have, I was gonna say that it shouldn't have senior engineers more than one, but they can have multiple senior engineers as long as there's a like they have different skill sets, right? One might be more analytical and one might be more like a vision, you know, product oriented type person. Um, but
well, I mean, isn't this where like interviewing is really important to see if the person shares the same philosophy and the same values?
yeah, but so I think what I'm getting at the short in this is that the how you construct your interview should be dependent on the type of position you're trying to fill and the team that does that. So there are places where having you might get an A-list candidate who has all of the, has just built out tons of GitHub projects, and they just have a lot of blog content. They're like, great, A plus. you're not good for this role. Because the role is, we don't need somebody who's going to be the, this technical like wizard and stuff like that. What we need is somebody who is very focused on this one little thing over here. And you might be able to discern that from their web presence too. How many things did they jump around from in that, or was it all deadline focused on one particular, problem space? Um, and does that fit with what you're looking for? Are you looking for someone to be a continuous individual contributor, like where they just they don't necessarily have the grand vision for how things work, but if you give them a piece of a component to build out, they'll do it and turn it around, and it'll be quality work and it'll be tested and great. Like, I think that those are, like, you don't necessarily want somebody who's scatterbrained, let's say, and putting a lot of content out there. um
I want,
yeah,
yeah, we can agree to disagree, and maybe you have more experience on that end, and I don't. I want someone to satisfy the the reason why we're in business,
yeah,
to get a product out there, to get a service out there, so that we can get a return on investment. If that person is not thinking, and that's another important part, right? Like, I think it's really important for people to understand business, right? It's really important that that them writing code isn't what we're hiring for. We're hiring to make money or to save money, right?
yeah,
And there's so many quote unquote senior engineers, they don't process that for why they're even employed, right? Um, yeah, like I know what I would want for my dream team if I were to assemble people. They would actually more than likely probably have attempted their own startup, regardless of if they succeeded or not, just because it lets me know the maturity of them actually going more than just technical, but also thinking about the marketing, also thinking about the product planning, etc., versus someone that all they talk about is React, and
yeah,
they can't understand business objectives and sustainable development to satisfy or accommodate those. Like, it's the business part that I think a lot of software developers suck at. They're
yeah,
oblivious to it.
yeah. And I think that's the case, but I think that there's room for that kind of developer on a team. It's just, you have to structure a team. Like, team design is, I think,
Are
something
we
that's
talking about
maybe
startup
under.
or enterprise?
Yeah. uh well, both actually. Like, you
Okay.
don't, like, on a startup, like, yeah, you might need some technical, like a group of technical people that are have that high ambition and stuff like that, but you don't want everybody to be that person. Like, you'd need a variety of people that fulfill different types of roles. Like, you might not want this like super high technical analytical person to be your user experience person on your startup. Like, it might not exactly go quite well. But you might be able to take a more design focused or product focused developer who understands that and has kind of built out some, um, some feelers, or likes that kind of work, and put them towards that. So, but get back to, I will agree with you that having a web presence is probably very important for, and probably should be very considered when you're hiring for a consultancy, or for a potentially like highly skilled, where you're willing to shell out a lot of money for a highly skilled particular like domain vertical, like, or not domain, but technical vertical, like, if I'm going to hire you to be a SQL Server expert or something like that, you probably need to demonstrate that you've been a SQL Server expert.
I still think we're talking past each other. So there's maybe two types of activities, right? There's building a product to go to market because that product doesn't exist, and then there's maintaining a business, maintaining a product or a service that is making money, and we
Hmm.
just want continued sustainable channels of revenue, right? I could maybe understand hiring that Joe Smo that they do what they're told. They don't really have a vision, but you tell them to do something and it gets done. They
Yeah,
don't they
but
don't really go
yeah,
above and beyond to take ownership of the product and contribute to like the business vision. But they're task takers. Like you tell them what to do and they just do it. Okay, that probably is okay for an existing product, right? If I want to build something that doesn't exist, and again, I don't have experience hiring people, but I would think that I probably don't want that Joe Smo to be my first pick. I want someone that's demonstrated hunger, that they want to they're they're willing to understand different facets of the business functions in order to deliver a product. And they're going to complement the gaps that haven't really been filled. Like
yeah.
I think
So
there's a lot of value in that if there's two different categories of hiring for why you want to hire somebody.
yeah, and you're right. It's just whether, like I said, in the more startup focused one you're talking about, though, you might want one person that's like that for a particular team, and then you might want to try to multiply their capability by adding people that don't compete with their vision for things, right? And that's where it comes down to is like software. There's so many ways to build things, and if you're trying to multiply
I'm going through it
the
right now.
yeah, a 10x developer could be 10x, um, mostly because of how they are able to, you know, coordinate with other people to achieve what their vision is. So it might seem like I'm 10x or somebody, not me,
Or they need an
but
environment that contributes to their
yeah.
10xism.
But I guarantee you put two people on the same team that are both 10x type people and try to have them work together to solve the same problem. And if unless they are somehow interlocked in their way of thinking, like they're just, this perfect like union of like thought, you're gonna run into problems because they're gonna want to do things their own way because that's how people like that want to do things.
Right, right. And whose
Yeah,
fault is that?
that's engineering management, which is
Exactly.
who's hiring for these positions. That's why
Yeah,
I'm
but
saying
but
from a
but
from a tech.
you're managing the development effort, right? So someone that is responsible for managing the development effort should be intelligent enough to understand the strengths and the constraints of individual developers and manage them correctly. You don't throw them in the same team and think that everything's going to be bliss. You
Yeah.
realize that they're both high performers, they're very opinionated, and they operate off of very different philosophies, but they achieve the same objectives. You
Hmm.
don't put them in the same pot. And I think a lot of managers that lack engineering and lack understanding the people factor, they get it wrong,
Yeah,
right?
and I don't think that's an engineering thing. Well, it's a lack of understanding how teams work and how people work and how people work with people that are around them and that. But yeah,
That's not social engineering.
yeah. Well, yeah, that's what they need to be good at is they need to think about how engineering managers, which probably shouldn't even be like a te- ever considered a technical role. You could take somebody who's completely non-technical and probably do this because what you're doing is trying to design for efficiency.
Who?
And yeah,
Who is an example, a mainstream example that isn't technical and has and is recognized for being a genius for managing the delivery of a product?
I don't know,
That
man. They don't have web footprints. None of them do. No, there are. I don't know. There are some
Jobs was
probably some
technical.
people, but
Would you argue against that?
he had technical knowledge, but I mean, it
Was
was more
Balmer
like seeing the vision of and then having people work on that vision. Was Balmer?
was Balmer technical?
I'm sure he had some technical chops, but he was more of a business guy.
Was Starts with the S, ends with the A. I can't remember his name. Sanchel. It's not Sanchel. Sayedel. Who's the Microsoft CEO?
Satya, is that his name?
Something. It's not. Uh,
Nadal. Yeah,
is he
I said,
technical? Like most of
I
us,
think so.
like yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know. I kind
Anyways,
of I kind of
yeah,
debate that, but
yeah. So that's what, and I think that
Sacha, something like that.
yeah, I can't think of it off the top of my head right now either. But I think that applies for teams, but it also applies for like how you structure teams around products. It's that whole like your what is it, the architecture and organizations should kind of align, in that your communication structures between your teams mirror your architecture.
Yeah.
um, I
Phil
think that
Jackson would not put Iverson and Kobe on the same team, right? Like it's how you manage people,
yeah.
right?
So I watch League of Legends a lot. Well, not a lot, but and that's the thing. Like they've put together super teams where they've got a bunch of people who have been around and play the game in certain ways, and they're really good in their individual things. But you put them on a team together, and they don't necessarily thrive. And because of competing ideas and how to play the game and strategies and stuff like that. So I really think like the ideal thing is to have like a team of like maybe like three people on from a development standpoint on any given team. Um, and you have one person who's in a highly leadership type role, or they define the vision, and then you've got people that are basically like multipliers for that person. Um, and then or apprentices, in terms of like they're going to lead, but they're not there yet, they need to learn some principles. um, yeah, I don't know. Anyways, we're getting at time now.
Yeah, I really appreciate this discussion. Yeah,
Yeah, it's always fun.
I think Twitter shadow blocked me, so I wish people could
Shadow
benefit.
block you. Just pay
Uh,
$8 a
I
month, man. You'll get
I
it
am
back.
confident that I've been shadow blocked like on Twitter for the past year. I would post something and I would probably get like maybe 10 likes. I get nothing. They they don't they don't impression like my tweets anymore. Like they'll show it to you and maybe one other person, but that's it.
You just got to pay
So
for Twitter Blue, and then you'll be at the top of the list, man. That's what you got to
maybe
do. Is Twitter Blue even a thing anymore? Like looking at it right
we
now.
talking about the blue verified check
Yeah,
for
where'd it go?
$2 a month that Elon Musk
I thought it was $8 a
now
month.
charges for. Well, okay. They say he fired like programmers operating out of India
Well,
on
he
Twitter.
wants to have every. Well, he's re reforming the organization around how he does work with his other companies. I mean, they're all in office. And that's just the way the philosophy, or the way that he does organizes his companies, and he owns
Yeah.
them. Whatever.
Yep.
He could choose to do that.
I'm
I
not
just,
arguing.
yeah, I just laugh at all of the stuff when that's coming down with Twitter, and people just like how crazy they're going about it. And also,
Entitlement.
yeah, I also laugh at everybody who's like switching out, like, oh, I'm going to Mastodon now. It's like, oh yeah, back when Mastodon, I know it's been around a long time, but it must be the new Parlor. Why don't you just go over to Parlor then, or
Never heard of it.
Truth? Parlor
I
was
try
big
to
during.
I tried to download Rumble, but I couldn't sign in due to some bug, so I gave up.
Yeah, Rumble's pretty good, but Parlor came about during when Trump got kicked off. Well, I mean, it grows in importance when Trump got kicked off of Twitter. And then actually the big thing was is that Parlor ended up getting kicked off of AWS, so Amazon shut them down, and that was a big deal, because they're like, we don't agree with your, basically you don't agree with your politics, or like you're spreading disinformation, or you contributed to the riots on January 6th, whatever the excuse was. It's like they shut down, they used their technical power of that they own the cloud, basically, well, them and other people, to shut down this business. So I think Parler actually built out their own infrastructure now, because they can't trust that if you don't get in political qualms, you can't get canceled from the platform, their platform as a tech platform. So It's freaking weird. But
2022. All right. Well, it's been real. Uh, Thanks for hopping on. And
alrighty.
yep, see ya.
See ya. Bye.
Bye, gambler.